right, chapter 12. You're welcome. Chapter 12. Still talking about performance evaluation, but today we're going to talk about the balanced scorecard. I mentioned that on Wednesday, to see what it looks like. We're going to learn all the components. We're going to talk about some other non-financial measures that are important in manufacturing and service businesses too. I feel like I gave you one before, but maybe not. And I enjoy all of the topics that we've discussed, but I don't know, for some reason I find this interesting because it's a little bit of a diversion from, what we're used to, which is kind of just going hard at the numbers, right? And so we'll take a look at this and we'll look at some other tools for evaluating and kind of see how we bring this all together on our balanced scorecard, which is like a report card, right? So basically, and every firm, obviously does things differently. So this is a sort of just a general idea of what a balanced scorecard is. But like I said the other day, I like to think of it like your report card. And so you can see that at the top, there were 4 categories, right? On the left-hand side there. And so these are the different areas within the business that we're measuring performance, right? So first one is financial. And we've been doing that periodically. Now there are other tools and mechanisms for evaluating that we haven't covered. If you are taking Finance 202 or you're a finance major, you focus a lot on the different ratios that we use to evaluate performance. So, but we have performance measurements, then we jump down to the customer. And if any of you, I think everyone should work in, have a job in customer service of some type, or working with the public. You learn a lot about other people. You learn a lot about yourself. But I think it builds character, it helps you to develop your interpersonal skills, and for me at least, it taught me a lot of patience, and bless you. And you've heard the mantra, the customer's always right. But anyway, and in this day and age, recognizing the significance of customer satisfaction is pretty critical, because back in my old days, if you didn't like something, you might have complained to your, I don't know, in my case, a friend, a parent. Now people go on social media, right? They go on social media, and then they destroy whatever business that they're unhappy with, And then so it's a lot more public now than it ever used to be. So I think that that's really important. It's challenging to do as well, because you know how people can be, right? And then we have internal business processes, and that's basically how do we improve ourselves? How do we improve the mechanisms that we use to deliver products and services to provide our customer with a better experience? And then learning and growth. Are we maintaining our ability to change and improve? And I mean, you can certainly apply this to anything. I like to tell people all the time, you're never done learning. If you are, then you must be just kind of, I don't know, sitting at home and doing nothing, I guess. Because, if you're working, if you're in school, obviously you're constantly learning. And even after you graduate, that doesn't stop. You get into your careers, into your fields. Can you guys put your phones away, please? You get into your careers and your fields, and, there's professional development that you're going to be required to do to maintain your excellence or your expertise in your area. For me, and I'm starting to kind of get this whole thing, like where people I worked with people a long time ago, and they'd say, oh, when I don't want to learn anything new, I just want to do my job and that type of thing. And I realize the significance for me as a faculty member, how I cannot have that attitude, because certainly if I was teaching accounting and finance the way it was taught to me 35 years ago, you'd all be in trouble, right? It would be very antiquated, and it wouldn't really be relevant. And so, throughout the years, we have professional development that we do, and I've had to go and learn, the whole data analytics thing, which I honestly wasn't thrilled about. But I know how important it is, and I am thrilled to make sure students, get the most relevant, up-to-date curriculum provided to them. So those types of things. And you notice they kind of all go together, right? Like if you start at the bottom, learning and growth is necessary to develop those internal business processes, there's always training that to be had around here, and I'm sure if you have a job, even if, and again, remember I said the other day, I don't like to call jobs, like I'm just to this or I'm just to that. I used to waitress back way back in the day. We wrote everything on a pad, right? Now these waitresses, they have these fancy, I know there's a word for them, but I don't remember what they're called. You guys know what I'm talking about? The little things that they carry around, right? You can just slide your card. I mean, everything's just a little handheld device now, right? And that information in there gets sent back to the kitchen, and there's like a screen back there telling them what to make and all this stuff. Before, we used to take our slips back to the cook and hand it to them underneath the little warmer there that was there. I mean, things have changed dramatically, right, in 30, 40 years. And so it's important that, that we keep pace, right, and we're constantly improving and learning new things. Sometimes it gets overwhelming. Sometimes you think, like there's got to be an end, right? There's no end in sight. I don't know about that, but customers are and you know it too. You're always looking for the next best thing, right? I mean, you buy something and you're happy with it for a little while, and then you're like, well, now I need a new one, or now I want this instead of this. Like, I'm not satisfied now. Like, take your cell phone, for example. It's all good for a little while it's new, and then, you get a couple more, additions that come out, right? Generating the next generation of whatever, and you're kind of like, well, now my phone looks kind of crappy and doesn't look as great as I thought it looked, so I want the next best thing, right? So anyway, all of those things are areas in which we measure with our balanced scorecard. So when you look to the right here, the idea of this is like, okay, we talked about decentralization the other day. So vision and strategy can be thought of, and I like that this isn't like set up that it's top down necessarily, but we're kind of all working together here, right? So vision and strategy, we tend to leave that up to maybe upper level managers, right? And then, they kind of translate their vision and strategy into sort of directives or even questions, right? What are our financial goals? And I say this all the time, and I do this in my own life personally. If you want to achieve something, you got to write it down, and it's got to be real. It's got to be on paper, on your computer, whatever, in your phone. But you've got to put it down so that you're looking at it all the time. You can say in your head, oh, I'd like to do this or I'd like to do that. But I find that when it makes it more real or something, at least for me, when you write it down. So as far as goals within an organization, they should be kept somewhere that everybody can read them, or everybody's, they're being shared by upper management. What customers do we want to serve, and how are we going to win and retain them? And again, like customer service, it's tough. That is tough. I feel like I've been in the customer service business for as long as I've been teaching. You guys are customers, right? Do you see yourself as customers? What's that? You're paying for a product? Absolutely. So you're a customer, right? And satisfaction is measured. Next week you guys will do an idea evaluation for me, right? And that's one way that we measure performance of faculty. It's not the only way, but it's one way that I like to look at, and I tell faculty all the time, if you get to the point, and if you're a tenured faculty member here, you don't have to do idea evaluations. So some faculty don't do them, and that's fine, they're not required to. I personally do them for all of my classes because I think my feeling is if I get to the point in my career where I say, I don't care what students think, or there's nothing I could do any better, then it's time for me to retire. It's time for me to find something else to do, because that should never be the attitude for someone who's working in higher ed. Because there's always something you could do better. And I mean, I have semesters where I teach this, I can't remember, I don't know how many times I've taught this class, right? And some groups, it goes great the whole semester long, and other groups, like you struggle because of the dynamic in the room or whatever. And I don't like to let my attitude about what's going on in the room to impact the way that I deliver content. And sometimes it's not always easy to do, you get frustrated, we're human, whatever, that kind of thing. So, every semester when I sit down to evaluate, and I sit with my faculty and I say, you evaluate yourself, you tell me what you can do better. I don't know I observe people, but if you're honest with yourself and you want to improve yourself, you're going to be honest about your performance in the areas in which you could improve. And that's a constant thing, and it should be. If you want to continue to deliver a good product. So yeah, and it's not always easy to say, well, I could have done this better, or I could have reacted this way. And I mean, I could give you plenty of examples where I could have, should have done something different, you know? Anyway, so, and then, you know, all of those things obviously impact your financial performance because, you know, if your customers are happy, they come back. They tell other people about your product or your service, right? And that increases your revenues. That's revenue generating type of things. So, you know, you could think of probably, if I asked you to think of and write down, you know, one example of a business you had a bad experience with and one example where you had a positive experience with, we could probably trace those experiences to internal problems within the organization itself. You know, when your employees, when motivation is low, right, or morale is low, that's going to kind of, it comes off of you, right? And I'm sure we've all had experiences like that. And is there anyone in here who hasn't had a negative experience somewhere? Yeah, no, I doubt it, right? I guess too, it's how you deal with it, how you choose to deal with it. You know, and we all see the Karen, you know, videos and memes and stuff like that, and you know, and yeah, some people are like just go around looking for things to complain about, right? But you know, people, as long as people are involved, right, you're going to have these issues. Okay, so anyway, I already talked about that. Here is some. So the next few slides have each of the areas broken down into what's being measured. So this is like the grade you're getting, right? This is what you're being, you know, so like in school, you're either, you know, getting a grade for math and English and whatever other courses you're taking, right? So this is within learning and growth. So we're starting at the bottom, okay? And we have a couple of different areas, and these are all pretty important: recruiting, skills development, compensation and advancement, wellness and safety, job satisfaction, and retention. And so the organization would be measured on how well they perform in each of these areas. So recruiting is, you know, recruiting is tough. Like when you're trying to recruit the best and the brightest, it's not always the easiest thing to do. I mean, I've been involved in plenty of hirings of faculty members and, you know, people in general over the years. And I can tell you that I've had people sit across from me and they were their true selves, right? And I thought, this isn't gonna work out, this is not a match. And that was the end of that. I've also had people sit across from me and I thought, man, this person sounds like a perfect fit. And that doesn't work out either. People tell you what you want to hear, you know, if you're really good at that, you know, you can kind of come across, you can make yourself look different in a very brief engagement with somebody else, right? So it's kind of hard to read people sometimes. And so I don't like official, and this is probably less common now. We're like sitting in an interview and everybody's all tense and stiff and it's real, you know, it's real formal and there's like 4 people sitting at a table and they're all firing questions at somebody. I don't like that kind of interview approach because I feel like people, that's more of like a rehearsed thing, and people, again, you can tell somebody what you want to hear. The best way to get to know people is to hang out with them for like a half a day, right? Just like in casual settings, go to lunch. You know, when you're giving tours and you're walking around campus and you're talking, or just one-on-one, like in my office with somebody, you know, you learn a lot more about people and you get their true personalities kind of come through in that situation a lot easier than it does in a very formal, uncomfortable, right? People, when you can like kind of breathe a sigh of relief, you're more likely to be yourself. But recruiting is tough. And, you know, right now, I don't think it's hard to get a job personally. When I graduated, it was nearly impossible to get a job. It's kind of funny how those cycles work, but yeah, and it's costs money. You know, it costs money to recruit. What do you think some of the costs are associated with recruiting, hiring? Will?
Like that lunch?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I'm not going to invite you to lunch as a candidate and then make you pay for it, right? Fine.
Traveling to recruit someone?
Yeah, traveling, right? Yeah, I mean, and you know, that can get a little expensive too, right? Depending on what you're hiring for and where people are coming from or you're expecting them to go to. Even like the advertising piece of this, right? I don't know if you guys are aware, but like, and I know people don't read the newspaper anymore, but you know, even just to put a little ad in a online paper or something like, it's like $400 or $500, you know, it's not cheap, right? If you're posting out on websites, I don't have a clue how much it costs to put a job on LinkedIn or what's one, Indeed. I have no idea how much those sites cost, but there's a cost associated with that, right? And you have internal, you know, you have your HR people that you're paying, right? And their salary their wages, their benefits are a cost that is associated with recruiting as well. And then if you're doing any kind of background checks on people, right? And in accounting, that's pretty common. In accounting, that's pretty common. And so if, you know, in some of the accounting firms that come here and like to recruit our students, one of the things that they automatically do is because they work with government contracts is they do background checks. And you know, you got to be able to get clearances before you can even be hired as an intern. And they're not cheap, right? You have any idea, like what levels and how much?
The top secret one is about $8,000.
Top secret, $8,000, around 8,000. I mean, I knew it was in the thousands of dollars. Wasn't sure how much. So you know, they're paying for this, and you're not even hired yet. You can't get hired until you can pass all those, you know, get through all those clearances. So, you know, that's obviously a factor, and so you want to make sure that when you're recruiting, you're able to kind of pick out the people that you think are going to work out, right? Skills development, you know, and Dr. Fry is always really big on, you know, if you want to go to a conference, you want to learn how to do this, we have grants here at the university for that. I got some training in data analytics a few years back, and I earned like 5 certifications through the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. It took me like a year, but it was like $3,500, and they paid for it for me because they knew I would, you know, I'd be teaching a class that, you know, that I needed to use those skills. So, you know, that's important too, having the support to actually advance your skill set, right? Compensation and advancement, and this is one that, you know, this is kind of all over the place right now. Like, I've heard of students getting jobs, and I think, wow, I'm in the wrong field. And then, you know, and then I hear other people. I had somebody send me looking for somebody I know that owns a business in Johnstown. Well, actually, not just Johnstown, but primarily in Johnstown. And she's like, I'm looking for an HR person and an accounting person. And I was like, okay. So I read the job postings, and I thought, ooh, how do I tell her politely she's never finding anyone for this rate of pay that she wants to offer? Not even in Johnstown, which is, you know, kind of considered sort of more of a depressed area. You could make more money anywhere else, pretty much, than what she was offering. And I did, you know, I left it up to career services to approach that subject with her. I thought, I'm gonna stay out of this because, you know, anyway. And advancement, you know, what kind of promotions? And I've worked with people who were perfectly content to remain in the position in which they were hired for years. I worked with somebody who worked in the same exact job for 35 years, and she was perfectly fine with that. I had a neighbor that worked for the Social Security office for 45 years. She worked for the Social Security office, Social Security Administration. She had opportunities to be promoted to manager position. She didn't want any of that. She was happy in her role, and she did that same job for 45 years and retired. So some people don't want to necessarily advance to the next level, right? But, you know, if you are someone who wants to, those opportunities should be available to you, and if they're not, then you should be made aware of that as well. Absenteeism and, you know, wellness and safety, that kind of all goes with that. I find it, I'm just shocked, and you know, my kids are older than you guys, but I'm still shocked when they tell me, yeah, my daughter hires for her department where she works, and she's like, yeah, I had 3 interviews scheduled and 2 people didn't show up. And they didn't, like, they just didn't come. And I'm thinking to myself, they didn't call, they didn't email, they didn't say they weren't coming, they just didn't show up. Please don't do that. Because, I mean, that just looks, I don't know, that looks really, really bad, you know? And if you've got somebody who's constantly missing work, there's probably a reason for it, right? Whether it's a personal problem, it's a medical problem, those kinds of things. Or maybe they hate their job, I don't know, you know, so those types of things. Workplace accidents, you know, my husband's a UPS driver. Workplace accidents are obviously like a top thing that they worry about all the time, you know, drivers and how many days they're accident free and whose fault it is when there is an accident, that kind of a thing. Job satisfaction, you know, companies should be surveying their people. How satisfied are you with your job, and what can we do if you're not? What areas are we, you know, you think we need to improve? But anyway, those types of things. And then retention, you know, employee turnover. There are certain types of businesses that where turnover is high, especially businesses that, you know, have temporary job openings, you know, college students in the summer, that type of thing. Average year of tenure per employee, that just means how long has the average person been at your organization. If it's like, you know, 6 months to a year, you're probably not the best employer, that type of thing, right? And we can talk about some of the great, local businesses. I mean, Sheets always one that I like to bring up. There are certainly many more than Sheets. Wessel is a local company that gets, great evaluations, and they get published in different things. You can kind of see that, but it's really all about how you treat people, and this particular area focuses heavily on that. Let me ask you a question. If you guys, when you guys, and I know some of you are still kind of far away from thinking about permanent jobs, but what do you think is most important when you're looking for a job? To make you happy? Enjoying the work? Yeah.
Work-life balance.
Work-life balance, okay. Yeah, that expectation of like you got to be available weeknights, weekends, and I'm glad you brought that up, because sometimes that like here that's tough, because I don't really have a set schedule other than when I have to be in class, right? And so, and students, and I certainly I tell students, email me whenever, and our general, we'll reply within 24 hours, but that's nights, that's weekends, right? And so that can be that can kind of bleed into my personal life sometimes, which doesn't bother me. I it comes with the territory, and I've been doing it for long enough that if but I have the flexibility too. Like if I want to leave after my class on a Tuesday at 12:30 because I have something going on, I can. So it's not like I'm not punching a time clock, but then it does make it a little harder, as far as that work-life balance thing. Whereas my husband, he goes to work at 8 in the morning, and when he gets done delivering his packages, he's done. He doesn't bring his work home with him. He doesn't even talk about it usually at night, and he doesn't work on the weekend. So there's nothing for him other than that 8 to 6, 8 to 7, whatever it is, time frame between the time he leaves and gets back. That's all there really is to it. So anyone else? What else do you think, what other things are important to you? Salary, yeah. But it's interesting. Yeah, I think, and you want to be paid fairly, right? You want to be paid a fair wage for the job that you're doing, given the education that you have. But I promise you that money isn't everything. If you have the most miserable job in the world, right, it doesn't matter how much money you make, that doesn't make the job any more pleasant. So you have to think about that too. And I know it's not easy to think about that right now, because you guys are like, well, I don't have a lot of money, I'd just like to have some money, right? So I get that. Internal business process measurement. So this is the one that we're going to focus on in terms of learning a couple of different formulas for measuring these things. So what falls under internal business processes is innovation, product design. I'm not very creative, so I'm always amazed at new products that come out and the ideas that people have, and then I say, wow, why didn't I think of that? And I know why I didn't think of that, because it's not how my brain works. But do you know anyone that's always developing or making new things? My dad was like that. He was real creative. I never really did much with it, but he always had some interesting idea. He was a car guy, and tools. He has all these tools and stuff, and kind of digging around through some of his stuff now, and I find it interesting the way they organize things and how he did things. But anyway, people like that have that side of the brain that mine's not that developed. So I appreciate that about people, though. Product and service quality. How often are people bringing products back because there's something wrong with them and there's a warranty, that type of thing. Defect-free units, that kind of thing. Customer complaints. The cost, and cost is a tough one, because we oftentimes associate quality with cost, right? And that becomes a challenge when you're trying to offer a high quality product at the lowest cost possible. And you've heard the phrase, you get what you pay for. You guys ever hear that? You get what you pay for? Do you think that's true for the most part? Have you tried like a substitute product or something that was a lot cheaper than the other thing that you normally buy, and you found that that was worthless, that's a waste of money, this isn't working, I'm going to go back to the other product even though it costs more money? Yeah, we could all probably come up with an example of that. Something called we're going to look at something called delivery cycle time. So time. This is a big one for most people now. When you guys order something online, let's just say through Amazon, you're checking every 20 minutes to figure out when's it going to get. You wanted it here yesterday, right? Do you like to wait more than a couple of days to get what you ordered? No. Does it make you anxious when it's not here, when you thought it would be here? Yes. You know, back in the old days, people, we used to have to order things that would take like 2 or 3 weeks to get them in the mail because you had to write a check and put it in the mail. Speaking of put it in the mail, how many of you have ever filled out a card and mailed it? An envelope. No, I'm being dead serious here because I have a parent fail last weekend was my birthday, right? And my son's away, and my daughter was like, did Ben send you a birthday card? And I'm like, no, I didn't get a birthday card from Ben. He called me, and she's like, well, I told him to send you a card. And I said, I don't think he's ever sent anything in the mail. So he texted me yesterday, and he's like, did you not get a birthday card from me? And I said, no, son, I didn't get a birthday card from you, but that's okay. You called me on my birthday. He's like, but I sent you one. I said, not being rude, do you know how to fill out a card and like how much postage costs and all that stuff? And he said, well, I Googled it. I was like, I failed as a parent. My kid doesn't even know how to fill out an envelope. So we don't know what happened to my card, but you know, he says he sent it. He said, I even went to the post office and bought a stamp because I was thinking, maybe, I don't know. So who knows? Who knows where my card is? And he insists he filled it out correctly. But then it made me think, like, how many people his age don't know how to fill out a card and send a card, or haven't filled out a card and sent a card? Anyway, yeah. So anyway, the time something takes, that's really critical. So time is money. You guys heard that phrase too? Time is money. Yeah, that's pretty true. And that's something we call lean resource management. So these two areas here, we're going to learn some formulas for actually measuring these, like measuring them quantitatively. But being lean basically means that, you know, you're providing products at low costs, and you're doing things efficiently, and that's not always easy to do either. And then different customer measures. Oh goodness, this gives me a headache here because you're like, again, customer is always right. What they say. You got customer satisfaction. Are you retaining customers? What's the customer's lifetime value? In other words, you know, how much money are you actually making from this customer? That type of thing. Customer loyalty. By the way, these are in your textbook too. Customer loyalty, customer service, and you can see different examples there. And throughout all of these are like pluses and minuses. So, you know, a plus obviously is a positive thing. A minus is probably not so positive. I've seen companies do these too, like a literal letter grade or a number, like 1 out of 5 or something like that, or 1 through 5. How many of you stay on the line when they ask you to do the customer service? You guys do that? Like, yeah, sometimes, it just depends, right? Would you be willing to stay on the line and answer a couple of questions? Customer, so you guys are like, click, right? You're gone. Now, are you more likely to do that because you're happy and satisfied with the service and all went well, or you just aren't going to do it either way, even if you're pissed off?
I'll do it if they're nice. Like, if they deserve like a good recommendation or like a rating, I'll do it. If they were like that customer service person just being like snobby or like a hard person to talk to, then I don't do it. I don't write them a bad review. I just don't.
Oh, so you wouldn't do it and write them a bad review. You just wouldn't do it at all.
Yeah, but if it was a good customer service representative, then I'd do it.
Yeah, see that's interesting because I think if you don't fill out, it sends the same message as if you're kind of just like you didn't like them either, right? So I'm not really sure how you work through that on the other end. So, but I feel like a lot of people would probably say the same thing. I mean, it just depends for me. I don't know. If they tell me like it's a 2-question thing, then I'll stay on the line because I'm like, oh, I got time for 2 questions, right? But if it's like 5 or longer, I'm not staying on the line for 5 or longer. And anyway, so that's customer service, and then financial measures, some of which we've already done. You know, we can measure something as simple as, you guys know this already, contribution margin, net operating income, residual income. That's in the profit section. Cash flows. We don't really talk about cash flows too much at the 100 level, but we get into upper level courses and we cover cash flows. Profitability ratios. There's my finance piece, right? And sales. Trends. I'm always fascinated with trends. I think that's interesting stuff to look at, but I like charts and graphs, so that's probably why I like those things. Stock performance, you know, that's reflective of how the company's being perceived by the general public, right? And, you know, stock going up is stock going down, that kind of a thing. So lots of ways to measure performance, but you can see that it's broken down into a variety of areas. So we're going to look at one thing today, and I kind of read, I'm not going to I'm not gonna, this last slide here, basically I've already said, so. Conformance is something that, this is just kind of a mention in here before we look at one of the first tools that we're gonna be talking about. And conformance, really, we're talking about preventing defects and increasing the quality. Someone said to me this morning, oh, I think my dishwasher's not working. He's like, well, it's only 7 years old, but the average dishwasher only lasts 10 years. If you look up the average life, and if you're not a homeowner, you probably don't care, so maybe at this point you know, but once you get a home and you're paying for all this stuff out of your own pocket, you start to kind of pay attention. The first washer and dryer that I ever owned, I owned it for like 20 years. And yeah, and the only reason I even got rid of it was because I wanted something new and fancy, and the new and fancy lasted me 5. Yeah, and then I was mad at myself. I was like, well, that was a piece of crap, and it was, you know, and then you have it repaired a couple of times, and the repair guy goes, you know what, this repair is gonna cost almost as much as a new one. So, you know, then you're like, okay, well, you know, so I'm on my 3rd set, by the way, and then I got a little wiser on the 3rd set, and I spent more money, but I think I'm okay for a while now. But I don't think I'm gonna get anything that's gonna last me 20 years. Refrigerators. My parents had I can't even remember how old it was, and the repair guy said, don't get rid of this if you can hang on to it. You know, because they don't make things to last anymore, and that's intentional, right? Why not? Why does a manufacturer of appliances want? Yeah, they want you to come back, right? I mean, it's crazy. You're spending all kinds of money on these appliances, and then they're only going to last you like 7 to 10 years. I just had to replace my water heater last summer. And I was pretty excited. I looked at the date on it, and I was like, yeah, I got more than the average out of that water heater. So the average water heater lasts about 10 years, you know. So anyway, quality of conformance. Costs incurred to prevent defects or that result from defects in products are known as quality costs. Many companies are working hard to reduce their quality costs. So, you know, again, you reduce your costs, and unfortunately, that often has a direct impact on your quality, right? I don't know. I think it's hard to be free from defects without spending the money on the right kind of components or parts, right? So, like my new washer is all stainless steel. Now, I paid a little bit more money for it, but I know that it's not cheap plastic that's going to break, right? So that kind of a thing. I mean, you get what you pay for. I always say that. Get what you pay for. Prevention costs. These are just some terminology here. Any kind of activities that will help to reduce the number of defects. And then we have appraisal costs. These are, and they're not appraisal like the term, like you know the word appraisal to mean, but these are incurred to identify defective products before the products are shipped to customers. So I like to think of that more like an inspection kind of a thing. I'm not really sure why they call them that, but. We have internal failure costs, and these are incurred as a result of identifying defects before something is shipped out. Obviously, you got to fix it. You can't ship it if it's broken. External failure costs, these are expenses that result from defective products being delivered to customers because you know what they're doing. You ever get something in the mail that, or you know, order something from Amazon, you open the box and it was broken? No? Never? Amazon's perfect. Yeah, I mean, not often, I guess, but you ever get something that you know is glass, and then you go pick it up off your porch, and you're like, well, I hear that rattling around in there. Anyway, and most companies now are pretty good about, you know, exchanges and returns. So these are all examples of quality costs. I'm going to just kind of go through this quickly. Quality training, quality circles, statistical process, control activities, appraisal costs, that's our testing and inspection stuff. Internal failure costs, scrap, that would be like leftover stuff, you know. Like I always think of like dough. When you make cookies, if you make homemade cookies and you roll out the dough, right? And you got a cookie cutter, and then you keep rolling the dough till there's like hardly any dough left. And then what do you do with the scraps? Well, you eat them, of course, right? Even though you're not really supposed to eat raw dough, but you can't help it because it tastes good. Anyway, external failure costs, warranty repairs, loss of sales. Those are just some examples. This is an example of a quality cost report. You know, it can get pretty expensive. I'm not going to go through the details of this, but it can get pretty expensive. You know, and here's the only thing that I bring to your attention. You're looking at the cost of providing a quality product. These are 2 years compared. 18% of total costs are represented just by quality costs, and in the second year is 15%. So that's a good chunk of your overall expenses is providing quality, is a liken to providing quality. Okay, I'm gonna go through, here we go. All right, so this is one of the formulas, and I'll stop here after I go through this, but this is one of the formulas that we use to measure that section, and I wanted to kind of show it to you up here again. So if I go back up here to, nope, here we go. Internal business process measures. Under time, we have something called delivery cycle time, throughput, or manufacturing cycle time, and manufacturing cycle efficiency. So that's what this particular slide is a measurement of, or that's what the formula is. So this is a formula, and I love this formula, the way it's set up, because it makes it easy. So what we're measuring is the length of time it takes to do something. So we're talking about days and fractions of days. These are not dollar amounts, these aren't even units, they're days, right? And I mentioned a few minutes ago how important it is to us as consumers, how quickly we get something, right? I ordered something from Amazon over the weekend. I still don't have it, and I went home yesterday and I looked at my Amazon order and it said the 19th to the 21st, and I was like, man, where's my Amazon, where is it? And it's really nothing I need that badly. So, but like we get, like, I don't know, that's just how we get, right? We're conditioned because we're so used to having everything so quickly, right? So we don't want to wait, and companies need to realize that. And the more they can reduce the time that we have to wait to get our product, the more satisfied we typically are. So this is basically a timeline, and you have to assume in this example up here that what we're doing is we have a manufacturing firm that's making the product. So we start with when the order is received. So you go online and you figure out what you want to order and you hit place order, right? So that's when the clock starts ticking at place order. All the way to the end here when the goods are shipped and you have a tracking number, right? You get your tracking number. That's the amount of time that we're talking about. We call that delivery cycle time, which should make sense, right? It's the time that it takes for us to deliver a product to a customer. Now, within those days, right, there are different events taking place. And some of them, we're being real efficient, and others, we may not be so efficient. So this first area here we have called wait time. So when you go in and you hit place order, you guys know, like it'll say you'll get an email when your order's confirmed. You guys know what I'm talking about when you place an order, right? And most of the time, if you go to your email, you get the confirmation pretty fast, right? But if companies are making something, making a product, or you're ordering something that is custom, right, where you get to pick and design certain things, there may be a period of time where you wait before production gets started. So can you give me any examples of why you would have to wait for them to start your order? They have to get the materials, yeah. And if they're making things to customer specifications, they might not have everything in inventory, right? So that wait time is time that they're probably waiting to get their materials that they need to satisfy your order, okay? And then you've got this next big area here consists of 1, 2, 3, 4 different things, right? It consists of process time, which is the time it takes to make your product. It's that simple. Inspection time, when it's done, how long does it take for someone to inspect that the manufacturing process was adequate and that your product is okay to sell, right? Move time is the time that it takes to move it from the manufacturing facility into like the finished goods warehouse, if that's a different place, or maybe it's within the same building. But when you're moving it out of the manufacturing phase and into the, like, sitting here waiting. And then queue time is the time that it takes for the shipper to come and pick it up. Now, that one, sometimes we don't have a lot of control over, right? So you'll notice if we add process time, inspection time, move time, and queue time, we call that throughput time. And when we add wait time, we call that the delivery cycle time. So the only time up here, and this is kind of the point of all this, that really adds value to your experience as a customer is the process time. So you can't rush whatever, like, I mean, if a cake takes 45 minutes to bake, there's not a whole lot I can do about it, right? It takes 45 minutes, unless I want to eat something that's not completely cooked, then I will, I guess, right? But 45 minutes is the standard time that it takes. That's what I gotta wait. So that's the process time. That's what we mean by process time. All the other time is a waste of time in terms of what how the customer perceives it, right? And so, you know, if I had some custom piece of furniture being made, I would expect that the actual making of the furniture is going to take some time. You agree? But what I don't want to sit around and wait for is the shipper to deliver it and for them to set up a time and they can deliver it to me and all this other, you know, inspection. I want that all to be fast, right? I understand that making furniture takes time. So we're going to look at examples of where, you know, we evaluate the current process time or delivery cycle time that we're experiencing, and then we talk about ways that we can improve some of these other things. But I will stop there for now because I don't have time to do an actual example. So we'll do an example on Monday. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.